Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to another neglected gem. And today we're going to go back to 2002 and David Cronenberg's Spider. Now, this is so neglected that I think this might be the last Cronenberg film to get a Blu-ray or 4K release. I could be wrong about that, but this has taken a while. And I accidentally came across it. I didn't even realise it had a Blu-ray, but I think it was from the tail end of last year. This is a Sony Pictures Classic Blu-ray. It is multi-region, which is good for those that are region locked. This comes with a commentary by Cronenberg, and if you are a fan of Cronenberg, or if you've heard a Cronenberg commentary, which is quite hard to say, it's an absolute delight. Again, Cronenberg's so smart, but he never comes across as being like a know-it-all or anything. That's why he's one of the many reasons he's so fantastic. And we have an In the Beginning, How Spider Came to Be featurette, which is very interesting. And Weaving the Web, The Making of Spider featurette, which is very interesting. And Caught in Spider's Web, The Cast featurette, which is very interesting. And then we have a theatrical trailer, which is a trailer. It looks fantastic. I just had this on DVD, but it looks really good on Blu-ray. This stars Ray Fiennes, Miranda Richardson, who plays about 3 characters, Gabriel Byrne, wonderful support by the fantastic John Neville, Bradley Hall as Spider, Ray Fiennes' character, Mr. Clegg, as a child, and Lynn Redgrave. So it's, as always with Cronenberg, you do get a fantastic cast, because for some reason actors want to work with Cronenberg. Can't imagine why. Maybe because he's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, who will eventually get his due. I know it usually takes like 10 years or 20 years for people to realise, oh, see that Cronenberg film? It's actually really good. Music by Howard Shore, shot by Peter Krzyzewski. Obviously Denise Cronenberg was involved as well. So again, it might seem this is one of those little Cronenberg films that, you know, isn't that important, or obviously nobody really watched or bothered with. But watching it again, it's so good. It is absolutely fantastic. And it's, for me, in those second tier of Cronenberg films that aren't perhaps masterworks, but damn close to being a masterwork. So we're introduced to Spider, or Mr. Clegg, with a shot of an approaching train in a station, and then all the busy people caught in the human rat race. And then we get this character coming off the train, Ray Fiennes, and you can immediately tell something's not quite, he's not the same as the people who have got off the train, put it that way. He reaches down his trousers and takes out his possessions, bits of string, and you know, we learn and flashback how he developed this habit. So he's walking through the streets, and again the locations are just wonderfully odd and abstract, and he gets to this essentially a halfway house for people who have come out of psychiatric hospitals. Lynn Redgrave runs the house, and John Neville is one of the other associates who kind of not necessarily bonds with Spider, but befriends him, I guess. And then we see in flashback some of the things that have led Spider to this point. This is triggered by when he's sitting in a cafe and he looks at a picture of sheep out in the country, and this sets off, we see flashbacks to his childhood. But Cronenberg uses the Christmas Carol kind of device of Spider being in these flashbacks, seeing himself as a boy, seeing his mother, seeing his father, and being involved in the flashbacks essentially, which just adds another element and an immediacy and engages the audience and pulls us into that experience. Because as with all films about mental illness, there can be a distancing from that mental illness from the audience. You know, Fiennes, who is famous for his voice and being good looking, you know, he throws that away. He does a lot of mumbling. He doesn't actually talk that much in the film, but he doesn't go overboard. I mean, again, I don't know about Oscars and things like that, but very much like, how did Jeremy Irons, or at least Jeremy Irons' brother, not get an Oscar for Dead Ringers? Not that Oscars matter, but Fiennes should have got an Oscar for this. But perhaps he didn't go too much. You know, he didn't go far enough for to be Oscar worthy of the performance. So he's just very insular, and he mumbles and he fidgets and things like that. But he doesn't go full blown, like some actors perhaps would have done. He is, I guess, in the book that the film is based on, he's supposed to be schizophrenic, but Cronenberg didn't want to make it an accurate medical scientific portrayal of schizophrenia, because as he said, you know, schizophrenia is not mentioned in the film because Cronenberg, being Cronenberg, knows that if people knew, oh, he's a schizophrenic, again, that would distance the audience. Well, I'm not schizophrenic, so it's a thin kind of line. You could have easily made the character so unapproachable and so alienating for the audience that we're not engaged, we're repelled, and I'm sure lots of people will be repelled by Spider, but lots of people are repelled by Cronenberg films because Cronenberg generally talks about subjects that people go, oh, I don't want to see a film about that makes me uncomfortable, and it's like, that's Cronenberg's wheelhouse, and that's what true artists' wheelhouse should be. But by not alienating the audience, you are engaged, and certainly maybe it's more me than the general audience, but I kind of identified with Spider, and you do get drawn into his web, if you want to say that, as this complex relationship between his mother and father and his projection of the other women that his father may or may not have come across. So Spider's flashbacks are not they are not a reliable narrator, as the phrase is, I believe, and that kind of comes out near the end of the film. Everybody is fantastic, as you'd expect in a Cronenberg film. Miranda Richardson, who plays Spider's mum, and a couple of projections of characters invented by Spider's mind. Gabriel Byrne, as he talks about in the extras, has a difficult job of playing Spider's father, and also the projection of Spider's father by Spider. And Gabriel Byrne talks about not having to go too far in one direction or another, because again, you have the father, but you also have the projection of the father, as Spider is watching what's happening in his past, in his present. And Bradley Hall, who plays Spider as a little boy, is fantastic. I mean, again, child actors can be, let's be honest, quite annoying, but he gives a really good performance. Again, because Cronenberg does get criticised sometimes, the way Kubrick gets criticised as like being cold and whatever, but Cronenberg is such a human director, and he's such an actor's director, and he does work really well with this little boy who's playing a little boy, strangely enough. It's just such a great film. I'm not going to go into much further with the plot, but it's so delicately handled, beautifully shot. Again, it has another Howard Shore score that you don't realise is there until you realise it's there. Howard Shore perhaps never gets talked about in the greatest composers of all time, because even when his music is in films, it doesn't take over films really. Howard Shore just accentuates what's going on. He never takes over what's going on, that some composers do, for better or for worse. It's just such a great film, and it is a shame that it never kind of gets talked about. But finally, as we've found out, eventually, those holy grail films that you wish get a Blu-ray release, sometimes they eventually do get Blu-ray releases. And it's just so great to see this on the big screen or a wall as I watched it. And it looks so good and sounds really good. Fiennes had wanted to make it for 4 years. Cronenberg talks about how it was really hard to finance, because let's be honest, it's not a subject, as we've found out, that people want to really invest in. You could argue that with most Cronenberg films, but they got it to a stage, and then the financing fell out and they had to refinance it. They almost lost Miranda Richardson, they got her back, and they finally were able to make it. But again, it's pretty much been forgotten about. Again, it hasn't really been available, but I would urge you to pick up this Blu-ray, because it's absolutely wonderful. Apart from anything else, even if you don't like the film, you can listen to the Cronenberg commentary, which are always wonderful. He's such a lovely man, despite being really, really smart and talented. We're not jealous at all. Neglected Gem, probably one of the neglected gems in Cronenberg's own work, let alone in general. Certainly one of the best films of the 2000s that never gets mentioned. I don't think I even mentioned it myself in my favourite films of the 21st century, but it'd been a while since I'd watched it. But watching it again, it's just absolutely fantastic. And it really, despite its subject matter, again, some people might find it really grim, but it's actually quite moving. It's one of, I think, Cronenberg's most emotional films. Certainly I found it that way. It's just absolutely excellent, and I would highly recommend you try and pick it up and watch it if you haven't seen it before, or pick it up and rewatch it, because again, it's got a lovely release finally on Blu-ray. So thanks very much for watching this neglected gem that is Spider from 2002 from Cronenberg. And let me know what you think of Spider, and if you haven't seen it, please do pick it up because it's extraordinary. I mean, for me, it's the greatest Spider-Man film of all time, and it's not even close. I'll just leave that there. So thanks very much for watching, and hopefully you'll join me again for more neglected gems and other videos. This is Solitude Ronin from Solitude Ronin Films, saying farewell.